Greetings, YouTube, and welcome to episode 23 of Encyclopedia Magica Volume 1. Yes, we're slowly working our way through Volume 1, and we're currently in arrows of the arrow section still. I honestly don't remember where we left off. I'm going to start with, we start with the S's, because it was an R, so we're going to start with the S's. Sounds good to me. Let's see how well I can pull this off today. All right, we have the arrow of scent detection, 20 XP, 120 GP, Dragon Magazine. The arrow allows its user to smell odors from locations at which the arrow landed, similar to the arrow of clairaudience and clairvoyance. That is really bizarre. It said, one major drawback of this arrow is that the poisonous or harmful gases may be inhaled in this manner. How the heck can you do that? It's a wireless connection, and you're telling me that poisonous or magically dangerous gases can travel across a wireless connection? Spells have ranges. Poisons have ranges. That's a BS thing right there. I would not allow that, man. This is a strange niche item as to begin with. I mean, how often can you imagine this being useful? Even if you had the scent ability, how often are you going to need to smell something way over there with a wireless connection? Yeah, that's a weird one. It says, if the arrow is entirely buried in water or mud, the arrow's user coughs and chokes for 1 round, being unable for that time to breathe, fight, or even move. That's way too powerful. Okay, if this is wicked cheap, 20 XP to make. And again, I don't think you should be spending XP to make magic items. You should be earning XP when it comes to magic items because you're learning a skill. Okay? I am better at using an angle grinder today than I was the first time I turned one on. I've gained experience. Wicked cheap. But you're telling me this thing can teleport matter wirelessly over... No. If you land in water or mud, you just can't smell anything. Yeah, that's BS. Then the arrow of screaming. 20 XP, 120 GP. This is from the Rules Encyclopedia. This arrow effect occurs when the missile is fired, even if it misses the target. As it travels through the air, the missile produces a loud cry, causing all within 30 feet of its path to check morale. If the morale check fails, the victims retreat in fear for 1d8 rounds. That's pretty powerful, though it does tell people you're there. However, you can actually get screaming arrows that are not magical. They're just arrows with whistles in the tips, designed to make sound. So that's a thing in real life, both for signaling and spooking people. And then we have the arrow of screaming 2, because one arrow of screaming wasn't enough. So here we go. This is also 20 XP and 120 GP. And the Dragon Magazine, same issue as the arrow of scent detection. I'm not surprised on that one. When this missile is fired, it emits an ear-shattering, scares people when it even affects the archer. Disrupt spells, kind of useful. And there's a 15% chance that a set of earplugs are found when these arrows protect the archer. So, like, they tape them to the arrow? I mean, if you're an archer who uses these things regularly, I can understand you may have earplugs, like, in your belt pouch. But you wouldn't strap them to the arrow shaft itself. Okay. Arrow of Seeking, 100 XP, 500 GP, Rules Encyclopedia. This talent only functions when the missile is fired at an object. It's not usable against creatures. It automatically hits any one target object within range as long as that path of travel is clear. It may be used as a missile of disarming if desired, or it can be used to sever a normal rope, uh, pierce a sack, push a button, target a trap, etc. It automatically misses any creature at which it is fired. So that's kind of cool. If you're going to be doing trick shots with something and you really need to do a trick shot, I could see maybe having one of these in your quiver just because, you know what I mean? The time when you want to do some anti-material effort, and you need to make sure that you're not going to hurt anyone around that. Because let's be honest, if you are doing anti-material actions with your bow and arrow under standard circumstances, you just fire it. Hitting a non-moving object is not difficult for a trained archer, um, and obviously within range. And the smaller the object is, the more difficult it will be hit, obviously. But the whole can't harm other people is very useful if, say, in a hostage situation. That could be quite handy. Now we have the Arrow of Seeking 2, same numbers, XP 100, GP 500. This is from the Complete Book of Elves. And there are so many elves in D&D. D&D always has so many elves. This is a more powerful version of an arrow imbued with a seeking spell. But not only does it round corners in pursuit of its prey, it also gains a bonus of +2 damage. These arrows are usually found in groups of 1d10, although sometimes many as 2d8 can be found. So the first one doesn't harm people, and this one apparently is a tracker. They've touched on that earlier in this book. I know they have. I don't remember what they're called, but yeah, having an arrow that can get around corners and stuff is quite handy. The Arrow of Set. Now we have a god-themed one. XP 250, GP 1500 from Dragon Magazine. Same as the other two arrows I just talked about. At first glance, this appears to be an ordinary arrow. Closer evaluation reveals the arrowhead to be made of bone and carved to resemble the head of a serpent. Okay, I got to tell you something right now. I've seen a fair number of arrows in my day. In person, in documents, at museums, on videos. And if you were to just have a bunch of arrows in front of me and I glanced at them, I'm going to notice the bone-headed arrow that's shaped like a snake real darn quick. Arrow set is a +1 arrow and damage. Anyone hit by one of these arrows must save versus poison. Yep. At a -1 or die. Ooh, instant die. A character whose saving throw is successful takes 2d6 damage points from the venom in addition to the damage taken when hit. The arrow disintegrates on impact. Making an arrow set requires bone from a poisonous, not poisonous, venomous. If you bite it, it's poisonous. If it bites you, it's venomous. Venomous snake for the arrowhead, plus the snake's venom, and an arrowhead is steeped in it. A priest must cast poison on the arrowhead during this enchantment. Only one is found at a time. Why can't you just have this be created with a poison spell? Why do you have to dip the, I mean, yeah, I can see using the bones, though you'd have to use the skull because there's no other part of a snake's body that's large enough to carve an arrowhead out of. I don't know if you've ever seen a snake, but other than its head, its spines, its vertebrae, and ribs. That's it. Lots of vertebrae and ribs. Go look at a skeleton. You can buy them. They're kind of cool looking. Now we have the Arrow of Signaling, 20 XP, 120 GP. Also from the same issue of Dragon Magazine. There was an archery theme that issue. It was 135. I don't remember. I read 135 when it came out, of course, but I don't remember this particular thing. This magical arrow has a brightly colored shaft, usually red, orange, or yellow in color. It sports a crystalline point. If used as a weapon, it does normal damage. However, if fired directly into the air at least 100 yards over the head of a a bowman, it leaves a trail of glittering sparks behind from 100 yards height up to the height of 500 yards, regardless of the type of arrow bow from which it was fired. When the arrow hits 500 yards above the archer, the arrowhead explodes in a sphere of light 100 yards across. That's a big explosion. Um, of the same color as the arrow shaft. A ball of light is visible for many miles and lasts for 1d4 melee rounds rather, before fading. The arrow disintegrates upon bursting. So it's a signal flare. And that's kind of cool. At an XP20 cost of GP, you can use to buy one of these things. That's very handy. I don't, did 3.5 or P1 have a signal device like that readily available? I don't know. I think you could probably pull off some of these effects with like an alchemical level. I don't know if you need, but you probably have to use a spell to get that one, get that one off. And 500 yards, that's a fair piece straight up. I mean, a mile is 1,400 yards, so you're a third of a mile up, and a little bit more than a third of a mile up, and it's a 100-yard diameter explosion. You're going to see this for a very far distance, and it's just going to stay there for a number of rounds. That's darn cool. Really significantly darn cool. Nice value. I like that one. How do I'm blathering again. Okay, let's go. The Arrow of Silence. Same issue of Dragon. 20 XP, 120 GP. This magical arrow is very useful indeed, especially when PCs are seeking entry to some heavily guarded fortification. Not only does this arrow hide the twang of the bow shot, it also silences any noise made by its target. Furthermore, any actions conducted within 15-foot radius of the arrow are cloaked as if by a permanent version of the priest spell Silence 15-foot radius. Couldn't you just cast that spell on the arrow and then fire it? Or can it not be put on a the spell itself cannot be put, you can cast a light spell on an object and fire it. So can you do, well, I could technically you'd probably cast a dark spell on an object and fire it. So you could blanks. No, that's handy. I don't know. Can silence be used that way, or could it be used that way? I don't remember the version of silence that we were talking about in here, let alone how that would work in modern edition of D&D. We have the Arrow of Sinking, 200 XP, 400 GP. That's a really low cost ratio. This is from Rules Encyclopedia. When fired at a watercraft, an arrow of sinking inflicts 1d10 plus 10 points of hull damage when it hits. If the AC of the vessel is used as the shot, there is a ramming or catapult attack. I can also see that could be used for breaching the side of a spelljammer. That could be quite useful. Literally blowing a hole in the side of a ship to let like a ramming attack be more effective, or to insert a team of some variety, or get an attack within the interior. Say you blow a hole through, then you fire an arrow. Fire a fireball through that hole. That could be really darn dangerous. Then we have the classic Arrow of Slaying. Everybody loves a good Arrow of Slaying. 250 XP, 2,500 GP? Really? That's a 10-to-1 ratio. That's kind of pricey, but all right. Also from Rules Encyclopedia. If the die roll for a missile indicates this ability, roll 1d100. The result indicates the missile's opponent. When an opponent is hit by this missile, the victim must make a saving throw versus death, magic, or die. Yeah, it is death, magic, or die, so maybe 2,500 makes sense. The specialty materials and all that falderall. In our categories are bugs. Just couldn't say insects. Get the bugs. Constructs, dragon kind, enchanted monsters, giant kind, lycanthropes, planar beings, regenerating monsters, reptiles and dinosaurs, spell immune monsters. So that's powerful right there. If they're immune to spells, they would not. Okay. Spell casters, undead, water-breathing monsters. That's strangely specific. And weapon-using monsters? That's a broad category. Lots of monsters can use weapons. Wow, that right there is going to be useful to against you against so many military targets because lots of military targets are going to be using some kind of weapon. I mean, technically, you strap weapons on an elephant, it becomes a weapon using monster because they're using the word monster to be an enemy. Um, yeah, that could be easily abused by a player such as me. Then it gives your descriptions of the categories there. And let me read what Epper. Ooh, and a nice little picture of somebody firing an arrow slaying at some kind of a worm. What are the weapons? Okay, his the weapon using monster category includes those creatures that have weapons in hand, not claws, at the time of melee. For example, a were-rat wielding a sword would be affected by this additional bonus, but the were-rat would not be affected if they were attacked only with its bite. That's weird. That's really strange. That that spell essentially has AI built into it. It's the item, the magic that goes in there, because it can tell. So if you fire the arrow at a were-rat that has no weapon in its hand, but it's drawing a weapon as you fire, does it do partial damage? It's got its hand on a weapon, but the weapon has not. What if it's just resting its palm? I mean, you see that all the time in films. People resting their palms on the pommel of their sword. Hmm. Wow. That's, again, open to massive interpretation and abuse. We have the Arrow of Slaying 2. This is from Dragon Magazine 35. 250 XP, 2500 GP. Seems to be the standard here. Ineffective against wild and crazy comedians, even when struck at the head. In game terms, this arrow is a -2 attack against bards. So it's a prop used by Steve Martin. I know it's a joke, but I would I would put that in the game as prize and let them think it's an arrow of slaying against bards. Arrow of Slaying 3 from the DM's Guide. 250, 2500. It's an arrow +1, +3 with unusual physical characteristics. A shaft of some special material. Yeah. Categories here, they're getting a little more technical with this one. Arachnids, avians, bards, priests, dragons, druids, elementals, fighters, giants, golems, illusionists. Oh, the poor illusionist. Mages, mammals, paladins, rangers, reptiles, sea monsters, thieves, titans, and the undead. How do you tell someone's a thief? A lot of these classes are a little more obvious. A good thief doesn't look like a thief. Hmm. Yeah. I also like the fact when arcane casters were called mages. I always used the term mage as a generic term for any kind of an arcane caster. So it could be, sorry, I could have niche. So it could be a wizard or a sorcerer or a bard, or there's like some other versions of things like from P1. There are quite a few different kinds of arcane casters. So that mage would be broad. Even like the occultist kind of stuff, I think would fall into that category because they're using psychic as opposed to psionic. They're casting spells that are mind-based, but they're spells. They're not psionic abilities. In fact, a really broad thing, you might throw scions under the whole mage category. I like that term. It's a good generic term in my book, and I use it a lot when I'm like coming up with ideas. Um, Build own types and modify or limit the foregoing as fits your campaign. In a Dragonlance campaign, an arrow of dragon slaying does not exist in Ansalon. See arrows of draconian slaying. You'd think an arrow of dragon slaying would be really important. All right. Then we have arrow of, I'm sorry, I'm running along with this one, but I'm having fun. Arrow of slaying 4. Again, 200, 250, 2500. The arrow uses the following table in Zakara. Arachnids, bards, birds, elemental wizard, enlightened being. See Sword of the Believers for definitions of enlightened and unenlightened. Sword that detects philosophical viewpoints? So it kills Buddha, but it doesn't kill me? Okay. Fighter, free priest, genie, hierarchy priest, mammal, paladin, ranger, reptile, sea creature, shiar, sorcerer, unenlightened being, undead. I don't remember Zakara a whole lot. I'll have to see if I have that in the reference. I may have that reference. Okay, we're going to stop there with the arrow of slaying, and we will start up next time. Hopefully I will remember that we're going to be starting up with the arrow of slaying, except it's spelled the kind of slay that Santa Claus used. Alrighty, so this has been episode 23 of the Encyclopedia Magica Volume 1. I hope you enjoyed yourself with these somewhat strange and easily abused magic items. Some of these items could, in the hands of a clever person, could very much be abused. And some of them are oddly ill-defined in my book. This is like the arrow is making moral and philosophical judgment calls. And I have to look up Sakara right now to see if I've got any information on it. I may have it in hard copy, but let's see if I got anything digital on my hard drive. I was moving data from some old hard drives onto my current external hard drive, which is an 8 terabyte. And when I moved the gaming file folder over, there were 43,000 items. Yeah, it's kind of silly. So thanks for being here. I hope you'll be here next time. I really enjoyed this one.